Well, a very good evening to each and every one of you, and welcome to today's show. We have got a jam-packed show for you. We are going to be jetting over to meet the new acquisition from the Landmark Trust. That is, of course, the station agent's house, now doing absolutely fantastic business, and you can stay there. As if that's not enough, Mark's been for a walk at Uppermill, and we've also got an interview with a gentleman called Brook Tate. And to culminate our show tonight, we are, of course, remembering the 22 who sadly lost their lives 7 years ago in the arena bombing. We've got an exclusive interview with Figen Murray. That's all coming your way on tonight's show here on Your Manchester. Well, there is a phenomenal show that has come out of true adversity, and it is coming your way very, very soon to the Lowry, the Keys Theatre. It's a beautiful show starring a gentleman called Brook Tate. Absolutely fantastic. It's called Birthmark. And joining us now on the show is Brook Tate. Welcome to the show, Brook. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Well, Brook, this show is gaining momentum literally by how the show came to be. Perhaps tell us a bit about how the show came to be.
So I've been a musician with I've written music for a band for quite a few years. And in 2021, I very last minute, on the spur of the moment, said to my band, tonight when we do the gig, we were playing at a festival, I was like, tonight when we do the gig, just play the songs as normal, but I'm going to improvise a musical, like I'm going to improvise a show. And they were like, what the hell do you mean? And I was like, just go with it. So we improvised our way through what has now become like a whole stage show.
And Brook, this is one of them shows, a rarity, that's kind of not set on the ground on Earth. It's set underwater.
Yeah, it's one of those ones, you know, that category of underwater shows. No, it is. It's so I grew up in Hastings, St Leonard's down on the seafront, down the south of England, and so a lot of my childhood was spent near the sea. And the Bible story that I sort of parallel it off is Jonah and the whale, or Jonah and the big fish, about a man who gets chucked off a boat and drowns underwater and then gets swallowed by a whale. So, and that situation, minus most of the aspects of it, could be paralleled with that situation, being chucked out of a religion.
Because this is about religion. I mean, for a while you were a Jehovah's Witness, and then you were kicked out for no other reason than being yourself.
Yes, and by a while, it was the first 24 years of my life. So I was born a Jehovah's Witness, or to a Jehovah's Witness family, and ended up being a missionary in China when I was 22, I think it was. I was fully in it and completely believed it, and thought I was one of God's people and that I would survive the upcoming doomsday Armageddon, and that I needed to preach to as many people as I could. But all the time I knew that I was, from an early age, I knew I was gay. So I was desperately trying to ungay myself the whole time. But eventually when I was 20, but while I was in China, I sort of had a realization and thought, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep going. So I decided I tried to slowly, sneakily escape and sort of like step back and just like disappear or like fade away from the religion. But the systems in place within the religion meant that I was basically kind of caught and dealt with officially, which meant that I was excommunicated or disfellowshipped, as they term it. And that meant that all of my community, including my family, were no longer allowed to talk to me or kind of have anything to do with me unless I returned to the religion. So, and that's the case for many, many people.
And would you say finding the outlet of theatre has become your new religion?
Oh, what a question. I guess I'm fascinated with what religion is and what faith and belief is and community. And yeah, I would say in a way, art. I would say art, not just theatre, but all art forms. I love painting and writing music, and I don't know. Now I'm into maths, which is weird, but I'm into maths. Just recently, I can see, like, humans are always desperate to believe things. Humans are always desperate to try and make sense of their life and their existence and the existence of everything. And art is a way that I think we as people, as individuals, make sense of things. Especially for me, that's how I've made sense of my life and the things around me.
And what is it we're going to be able to see with this show then? What we're seeing on stage?
So there's puppetry. I make puppets, giant puppets, and but not the standard normal ones. I make them out of, like, the main puppet in this is a garden parasol who becomes a whale. And we're all dressed as Jehovah's Witnesses, so we're in suit and ties in the way that I used to dress, and it's a conversation basically between myself and a gay whale called Gale the whale. And it's kind of like it turns into like a kid's book. It starts off like, you're like, oh gosh, I'm going to watch like this really serious thing, and the Bible's involved, and it's very stark, very like quiet, and then it goes into like a bit of a picture book, like trippy mind space, where it's like you're in a dream and I'm talking to this whale, and she's amongst the audience, and through this conversation that I have, I explain to her why I'm underwater, as it were, and why I've been kicked out.
Absolutely sounds fantastic. That is, of course, Birth Mart, 29th to the 31st over at the Lowry in the Keys Theatre. I think it's definitely one to watch. But now, though, Brooke Tate, thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Well, our Mark has been out and about once more, and he's been to a place called Uppermill, wherever that is. He'll tell you. Have a look at this.
Hello, and for this week's walk we are in Saddleworth district up above Oldham, and we're actually in the town of Uppermill. Behind me, the statue of local poet, he wrote in local dialect, Amond Wrigley. Now this is, well, you might think, a little bit of a quiet, beautiful place. Actually at weekends it gets absolutely packed. It's the place to come these days, and over Whit holiday it's the place where the band contests take part. You can't get a parking space. People line the street for the parades. It really comes alive. Now we have everything you would expect from picturesque mill town. We have buildings where looms would have been. You often see these three-storied buildings, long narrow window at the top, and that's where the loom would have been to allow light to come across the work surface. So people who worked at home would then take their cloth that they'd made into market and things like that, and they'd make their piece of cloth at home. That's why we call people who work at home today piece workers. You also, of course, needed the canal, and behind me we have our very own canal. And this would have allowed barges to take raw goods out to all the towns. Around here, of course, that would have been from the sheep farms, the wool and so on, and to get goods between all the individual centres of production, such as Manchester and Rochdale and Salford, Worsley and so on. And of course, Manchester has a huge network of canals. Here in Saddleworth, lots of little villages, Uppermill, Dobcross, Delph and so on, grew up and would develop because of these trades.
Thank you, Mark. How lovely was that? It looks quite a picturesque place, doesn't it? tell you, we've had a very, very busy week this week. I've been watching yesterday a show called Jesus Christ Superstar, and how I didn't get thrown out of the theatre, I will never know. It has to be the campus version of Jesus Christ Superstar I have ever seen. Me and said person, Mark, who I was there with, we were watching the show, and we could not help but notice that the very serious point of Jesus being whipped 39 times has now been replaced by somebody throwing glitter at Jesus. Speaking of the character of Jesus, a bit underwhelming, not exactly what you'd expect. Not Steve Balsamo, put it that way, or Paul Nicholas. Definitely not one of them. Overall, though, brilliant company, great dancing, and a fantastic experience visually. And we were going to give this show 4 out of 5, everybody, because why not? It's Christ, Jesus Christ Superstar. You don't argue. Otherwise, we'll make some people cross. Anyway, enough about that. Let's get that one. We are now going to go and look at a beautiful new establishment that's been cultivated by the Landmark Trust. Now, they are famous for doing so much with old properties and making them into places where you can actually stay. This one is available to stay. It's called the Old Agents House. It's right next to the Liverpool Road station, as it was, which has now, of course, become the Science and Industry Museum. And it is a beautiful place. They've done very, very well with it. Although you may be shocked to find out just how much it is to stay there. The Landmark Trust have now acquired the Station Agent's House, which was built in 1808 for dye master called John Wothrell. Bought in 1830 by the Liverpool and Manchester Railway, that's the LMR, to be the house agent for the world's first passenger railway station. It has now been totally converted and is available for you to rent at a very small price, everybody. That's right, it is now available as a wonderful self-catering holiday let for up to 8 people. Massive rooms in there, all done to a very, very high standard. And of course, you get the privilege of saying that you have stayed somewhere very, very historical. They did mention, of course, that there is no Wi-Fi in there, although, in my opinion, you kind of want to step back in time and have cut yourself off a little bit off grid, I suppose, is what you're aiming to do. Now then, despite popular belief, the house has not remained empty for that many years. In fact, in 1980, the 205th anniversary of the railway's opening, a trust was formed to revive the important heritage of the area with a new museum, today known as the Science and Industry Museum. The museum chose the station's agent's house for their first offices and carried out a comprehensive restoration. They removed the mid-20th century shop fronts and recreated the original windows and front door. The blind corner windows seem always to have been locked. This returned the outside of the building to how it looked in the 1800s. The interiors, however, were fitted out for the offices, and by the 2020s, the Science and Industry Museum unfortunately no longer had use for the house, so turned it over to the Landmark Trust to ensure the public could enjoy every corner of their site. For further information, why not head over to the landmarktrust.org.co.uk.
So 7 years this evening, I received a call from my nephew to say that he had escaped from the bombing of the Manchester Arena. Others were not so lucky. And as we know, 22 people lost their lives. One of those was Martyn Hett. And I'm joined now on the line by Martyn's mum, Figen Murray. Good evening, Figen. It must be a very difficult time of year.
Good evening. Yes, it is every year. And it always, although 7 years have passed, it always feels like it's just yesterday.
Now, it would be very easy to be kind of eaten up by hate, and I know you're very much of the opinion that hate breeds hate, does it? You've kind of campaigned, you've done all kinds of things in the aftermath of the arena. Do you want to tell us about some of the work that you've done, particularly in schools and things like that?
Yeah, I'm absolutely of the opinion that hate breeds hate and anger breeds more anger. And I choose the opposite way. I, less than 4 weeks after the arena attack, went on national TV and publicly forgave the terrorists who killed Martyn. And obviously, I don't expect anybody else to forgive this person. It is a very personal choice, and I'd do it in a heartbeat again, because for me, it is the right decision to do. So I feel that we live in times where things are really difficult. If you look at the geopolitical scene at the moment, everything is just so messed up. And it's so easy to be caught up on this faction and that faction. I prefer staying apolitical and not get involved in any opinion of either side, not because I'm too naive, just because I'm choosing not to. Because if only people could, instead of retaliating and wanting to be territorial, etc., if only people could, instead of that, just build a bridge and walk over it and meet the other person on the other side halfway, the world would be in better shape. And I just feel that the world lacks kindness and gentleness and tolerance and empathy and compassion. We've lost those values. And one of the reasons I go to schools, obviously, I talk to school children about the dangers of online radicalization and what to look out for. And I tell them how recruiters work online and the things they say. And I tell them how they can recognize signs of being radicalized on themselves and others and how to get help. But I also go to schools because I want to talk to young people about thinking about getting those important values back into their lives that they're probably not even taught anymore. It's not something you learn at school, values. But I think it is essential that young people never forget to be kind, never forget to think of others as well, not just themselves, and try and learn to see the other side and see the bigger picture. And I therefore teach them about kindness and tolerance and empathy.
And you've kind of taken, you know, what was obviously an appalling thing that happened to you, turned your life upside down, I have no doubt. But you've kind of really invested that energy, haven't you, in effect, into good.
Yeah, so about 18 months after Martyn died, my husband and I went into Manchester for the first time to watch a singer. And I remember getting ready and getting my smallest handbag, you know, to take with me because I thought that'll make the bag search easy. Because naively, I just simply thought that, certainly after what happened in Manchester, particularly in Manchester, that everything is really, really super hot on security everywhere. And when we got to the venue, people didn't even check my husband's entrance tickets, never mind bug searches and any form of security. And it shocked me to the core. You know, and I felt that, gosh, how can it be after 18 months that people have forgotten about those 22 who died and they don't care about security? So, and so what I decided then is I researched security at venues and found out that actually there is no law at all. It's totally optional for venues whether they keep you safe or not. Totally optional. And that, after what happened, cannot be okay. So I have started campaigning 5 years ago for legislation to be brought in, and I've worked since about 4.5 years ago with the Home Office on Martyn's Law. And that's a piece of legislation named after Martyn, my son, to mandate that venues actually have to keep you safe. And we've campaigned for a long time on this. I have a whole campaign team now with me. And we've had many meetings with the Home Office. You know, we've had since the start of this campaign. I'm now on Prime Minister number 4, Home Secretary number 3, and Security Minister number 6, although one of them sadly died. But it just goes to show how long a process it has been. And of course, we had COVID in between. So it's been 5 years since I've campaigned. And I have just done a 16-day protest march from the exact spot where Martyn died. And I arrived today at Marble Arch in London.
Fantastic. And what would you say to people going to events in large venues? What should they do to protect themselves?
Obviously be vigilant. Don't take a big bag, because if you're going to a concert, you don't need anything big. But if you're worried about other people carrying big stuff, tell the security staff that you're not happy, you're anxious. And you know, once the legislation is of course, a law which will happen sometime later this year, hopefully. But once the legislation comes in, then please make demands on menus to make sure that they don't let people in with rucksacks. And if you're not happy about security, you then have every legal right to do so. So challenge security by all means.
Mm-hmm. And how can people support Martyn's Law and the other work that you're doing?
Yeah, so I would think it's really important that as a general public, we all are sort of more responsible for our own security, because the face of terrorism has changed. People don't phone in advance anymore when they want to attack. They now get radicalized online sometimes and then just take a knife or a vehicle or something else and just go out and kill people. So there's no way that the authorities and the police can cope with all of that on their own. So we need to take a little bit of responsibility ourselves. So I would recommend that any adult in the UK goes on the Protect UK website and does the online 45-minute free of charge training. It's called ACT e-learning. ACT stands for Action Against Terror, sorry, Action Counters Terror, sorry. And that training video is interactive. It'll really highlight what you need to do or not need to do and what to watch out for. So I'd recommend that to anybody. And in terms of Martyn's Law, just keep an eye on social media and the news in the next few days and just support it as much as you can by social media. Sorry.
Now, Martyn was a big Coronation Street fan, wasn't he? And he has a special place down on the steps there with his memorial in the little park steps.
Yeah, that's right. He's got a bench with, it is sort of technically speaking a bench in his memory, but there are actually 22 bees and flowers on the bench for everybody there. And yeah, I mean, he was completely obsessed with the program. And to be fair, he knew a lot of actors and actresses in the program, and they were very kind to come to both the vigil and the funeral.
So just to close then, just give us in a few sentences, what was Martyn like?
Absolutely hilarious. You knew when he was about, he made everybody laugh. And he was larger than life for sure, and lived life to the full. And he was incredibly kind.
Figen Murray, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us this week, everybody. Take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you all on next week's episode of Your Manchester.